Okay, folks, we are taking a break in the Tex McIver case. But I guess the judge is maybe wrapping something up, maybe not. He said he was calling about a 10-minute break, so we're going to jump in and discuss things and assume we're not missing anything important here. David Eisbrouch remains along with me here on Law and Crime. So, David, you and I were just taking a look at the indictment here, and this guy's facing a number of charges. It's not just murder, it's a couple different flavors of the murder charge, so maybe you can walk us through some of that.
Well, I believe is being charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and felony murder. And anytime there's an underlying felony and a murder or a death occurs, then a felony murder charge is going to be added on. So basically, it's still the case within the case is that his defense still stands that it was an accidental shooting. So if the jury believes that, he's not going to get convicted on the aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and then felony murder really won't come into play. So his defense is the same, almost regardless of the two charges.
Yeah, so you've got the regular murder charge, okay, that's the old language that we all study for the bar exam, that there's malice aforethought, and in other words, that he was up to no good, that he wanted to cause the death of the victim. Well, the other murder charge that they're trying to go at here is to say, well, there was aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, which is a felony, and because she died from the effects of the assault, then it bumps up to felony murder. And it's sort of a convoluted way to get there, but really, all they need to prove against the defendant are the elements of the aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and just by the fact that the victim didn't survive, it bumps up to that next charge. It's kind of an interesting legal way to get there, but that's one of the ways they're trying to get there.
Yeah, they would still have to show the intent for the aggravated assault. Interesting, they didn't charge him with a negligent homicide indictment in Atlanta, and I don't know what the Atlanta specific rules are. But they are going with aggravated assault, so he would have to show the intent there. And just to finish up what we were saying before one of the breaks, I thought it interesting that in this witness, the second emergency room nurse, the prosecution pretty much asked the same question about the any conversations that she overheard. And again, you got the testimony in that the victim, the woman who died here, told the nurses, and they both heard it, that it was an accident. That they asked her what happened, and I was shot by my husband. It was an accident. And I think that's powerful on the jury.
I think it is. I'm sure that the state's going to turn around and argue that they can't read anything into that because maybe the victim was blindsided here by the defendant, and I'm sure that's where they're going to try to go with that. But again, does that argument override the fact that that was uttered by the victim? The jury would have to weigh that out.
That's going to be viewed coupled with all the other evidence that comes in here. And we don't know, of course, whether the defendant's going to take the stand. Usually they don't, but we've been surprised before in the last, actually the last criminal trial that we covered here on the network. But his story is accidental shooting. He had the gun in his lap. He was sleeping. Gun went off. What I find very interesting is the victim was shot in her lower back. If you're going to kill somebody, you're not going to shoot him in your lower back. It usually isn't a deadly shot.
Either that or it was so premeditated that he knew that they would look at that. I mean, lower back would make sense if he's reclining back in the back seat and he's got the gun is down on his leg. That sort of makes logical sense that it would back up the version of the story that the defendant is telling, at least as to the position of the weapon.
You can cut it both ways. You could say what you started to say, that he purposely shot her in the lower back because it would look like an accident.
Yeah, but
and take the chances of her dying.
Yeah, I mean, see, that's the thing is if you shoot somebody in the lower back, it's not generally, at least I don't think, as fatal as a shot to the center mass,
right, or
to the heart.
Or the back of the head. If you want to kill someone, you're sitting in the back seat, easiest way to do it is to shoot in the back of the head.
If that's the way that she had met her unfortunate end here, I think we'd be sitting here saying that this is a pretty slam dunk case for the state. But that's not what we have.
No.
We have a much more complicated factual situation.
We also have a situation where there was an eyewitness driving the car at the time of the shooting. If you're going to kill somebody, you usually don't have an eyewitness 3 feet away.
And here we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's listen to some of the previous testimony from the day. The judge called about a 10-minute break. We're about halfway through it. We'll be back to court live as soon as testimony resumes.
Hey, Sure. I was just trying to be respectful.
But sure. No.
Well, you don't have it.
Suspect here.
Was there anybody in the driver's seat?
I saw a woman getting out of the driver's seat.
And do you remember, can you describe the woman that was getting out of the driver's seat? Did you see her?
I did see her. I can't remember all the specifics. I just remember light-colored hair and some Western wear flair to her clothing.
Okay. Sounds like it's not your style.
Not my thing. Not my thing.
So, when you rushed to the front of the hospital, the valet area, what was the first thing that you and Miss Neely did?
So they were already trying to get her out of the car. So I was helping move her into the wheelchair. Again, at that time, I had no idea why she was there. There was no apparent trauma that I could see. I heard some light moaning, and she was very limp in her body. It was difficult to get the wheelchair moving because her legs were dangling off. So I grabbed a leg, and the other leg was not being pulled up at all. So I looked at the gentleman over here, and I said, "Can you lift up her leg?" And he started to. I asked, "What is going on?" And that's when he said, "Gunshot wound" to me.
Okay. So let me backtrack. You had to tell the defendant to actually lift her leg?
Correct.
Okay. So he was doing that in your direction?
Correct.
And then you said, "What's happening? What's going on?"
Yeah. I said, "What's going on?"
And he said to you what?
Gunshot wound.
Did he say anything else to you other than gunshot wound?
No.
Okay. So as you lift her one leg and you tell the defendant to lift another, what do you do?
So Alice is behind, pushing the wheelchair in. We're going through double doors. I reach down with my other hand and press my walkie-talkie, and I say, "GSW, Nicole," who was charge nurse that night, "we're coming to room 2, which is one of the critical rooms." By her condition and what was going on, she blows by triage. When they're critical, they go to the critical care room and they're triaged there. They don't wait in a waiting room or anything like that.
And when you get to the critical room 2, what was the first thing that you did?
So immediately you start removing her clothes, attaching her to monitors, removing her personal items, trying to get vital signs, that kind of thing.
Okay. And is she still limp? Is she still unconscious?
She was moaning. I was hearing small moans here and there, but she was not talking in any kind of full sentences at that time.
Okay. At that point, had any physicians come into the room?
Yeah, when we were moving her from the wheelchair onto the gurney, Dr. Hardy had come into the room.
Okay. And is Dr. Hardy talking to Ms. McIver?
Right at that point, I don't believe she was talking. I think she was talking to the staff, the nurses, saying, "What's going on? Get me this equipment, get me that."
Okay. And I'll back up just for a second because I'm technology, I'm not very good at it. So if you look at the screen that's in front of you, what are we looking at right here?
We're looking at 2 sets of sliding glass doors that come into the emergency room from valet.
And would these be the same doors that you ran out to the SUV and then came back in?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm going to play this for the jury, and will you tell the jury when you see yourself on the screen?
Sure.
And do you know who the person in the yellow shirt is?
No.
Okay.
We have heard some heartbreaking testimony from various emergency room nurses who treated the victim the evening that she died in the hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. David Eisbrouch, this is the part of the trial that's very, very sad, and jurors are going to listen and hang on all of the words that were exchanged between the victim and these nurses who had some of her last conversations committed to memory.
Yeah, even though some of the testimony is very technical and a little drab at times, and you're taking it minute by minute what happened, then there's a flavor of some very emotional things happening. For instance, when the victim asked the nurse, "Am I going to die?" And she said, "No, we're going to, help you. We're going to do as much, whatever we can. No, you're not going to die." Hearing somebody ask that question as one of their last questions, and actually saying at one point when they didn't know where the bullet wound was that, "I'm dying," and then the nurse checked the pulse, it's a very strong testimony.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sense that what else could have been done, what exactly was going on here, and maybe the second witness will clear it up a little bit. Maybe we'll get a more clear explanation medically from a doctor, as opposed to the nurses who had these conversations. But we know the outcome here, but then watching the process humanizes the trial. It's been a little bit more stoic leading up to this. Conversations about the victim, the defendant, their life together. Now we're really at this point of critical mass.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting when it gets us more of the medical testimony to see how long it took to get the doctors in place, how long to triage this victim. How long was she in the emergency room before she died? You mentioned a good point. Could anything else have been done? It seems that at one point they said they were waiting for surgeons to arrive. You would have thought that they knew that she was coming in. This would have been set up. And again, not usually a fatal shot in the lower back. Interesting to see how that plays out as well.
Yeah, I want to listen to some of that testimony. We were just previewing. Again, we've been listening to emergency room nurses at the hospital where the victim died. Let's review some more of that testimony. We do expect live testimony to resume any moment. We'll bring you back to court as soon as that happens.
To come up with a kind of a timeline of the events that happened, just roughly. I'm not asking you to be precise to the minute or the second. Approximately what time did they arrive, according to the medical records that we reviewed?
I think it was around 10:15, something like that.
And you want to look at them again? If they're in front of you, would it help? Or
Sure.
Okay. And to be fair, you did this with me the other day also, correct?
Yes.
Right. You're doing some of the charting, correct?
Yes.
You're making the entries on these medical records, correct?
Yes.
So approximately what time, according to the information that you had and the records that you were reviewing in your own memory, does the car arrive and she's admitted into the ER?
The time that stands out to me is around 10:15.
Okay.
But I can't be certain of that.
That's fine. And then what time does she end up in the operating room on the third floor?
Approximately 35 minutes later.
Okay. So, again, give or take a few minutes. Between the time she comes into the ER, which is, if she arrives at 10:15, maybe 10:20-ish or something, she's basically upstairs in the ER somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 o'clock. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And during that 35, 40-minute period, whatever it is,
Folks, we're going to break out of our review of that previous testimony because it looks like the judge is coming back on the bench in the Tex McIver case in Atlanta, Georgia. Again, here with David Eisbrouch, a local attorney here in New York City. David, we're hearing an awful lot from these emergency room nurses. We're expecting to hear a little bit more. It looks like they're going back into session, so let's listen in.
Jury's all present and accounted for, Your Honor. You may be seated.
Thank you, Deputy King. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pick up where we stopped. Ms. Griffin, you were asking questions of Ms. Wyndham.
Okay, you were about to show us where you were when you saw the man in the register. Yes. And can see it from here, or do I need to press play?
No.
Okay.
So this is the family room right here, and this is room 11. So they were standing right in here. My chair is right there, the workstation. My chair was right here.
just roll back just a little bit. If you could, Siri, please just go back to where the OR is and go inside the, not the OR, I'm sorry, the critical care room and go back inside. Okay, that's fine. Go back inside. Okay. When you heard the victim make the statements, where were you standing? If you could show me on the monitor.
The first statement, when she was saying that, when she first woke up, I was over here, on this side over here.
Okay, and that's when you said it was an accident? Okay, and when you heard Dr. Hardy say no one's judging you, where were you standing?
In the same spot.
Okay, and when she said her husband shot her, where were you standing?
In the same spot.
Okay, and when she said I'm dying, where were you standing?
I was there. Can you go back just a little bit? So I was standing at the foot of the bed.
Okay. And when you said you saw the lady with the straw hat come by, where were you at in the room then?
I was standing, yes, I was standing about here on the side.
On that side? And where was she standing on the outside when you saw her?
So the curtain was pulled, but she was about, I saw her through here, this gap here.
Okay. Thank you. I have another question.
Sam?
My name is Don Samuel.
Hi.
We haven't met before, have we?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. So I just want to just go over the question that Dr. Hardy asked the patient, Mrs. McIver, was, did you accidentally shoot yourself? And Mrs. McIver responded, my husband shot me in the back, but it was an accident. Is that correct?
Yes.
So Ms. Hardy, excuse me, I shouldn't have said that. Dr. Hardy asked a question to which Diane McIver corrected her and said, no, it was my husband that shot me in the back, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you've just shown us there, but you were right as close to her as Dr. Hardy was, right? I mean, you were on opposite sides of the head of the bed when that question was asked, and the answer was, no, my husband shot me, correct? You got to say yes or no so she can
Oh,
write.
correct, yes.
Okay. And the only other thing I'm going to ask you is, and what time is that about? Just give or take a half hour or so.
Oh, goodness. You mean what time of day or like, I don't remember.
I don't know what time it would be other than a time of day, but yes.
I don't remember.
I mean, was it around midnight, 11 o'clock, or you don't know at all?
I don't remember.
No problem. The triage is much later, though, correct?
It's much later?
When Mr. McIver goes into the triage and then goes into whatever room it was you were talking about, that was many, many hours later. Am I correct?
Are you speaking of when he was checking in or
Yes.
when? Okay, I'm sorry. So that was much later.
Okay. And if you looked at the medical records, would that refresh your recollection as to what time he went into triage, went in, and then, not too long thereafter it came out? Could you look at the medical records and tell?
I may be able to. I guess it depends on what.
Okay. I'm just gonna.
Okay.
You're not in evidence. You shouldn't read them out loud. But I would just signal the page, and I was hoping maybe this would.
So let's see here.
Don't say anything out loud. Just take a look at it, see if it refreshes your recollection.
Okay.
And if it does, say, yes, I think he arrived at whatever and got discharged at some other time.
Okay.
Good afternoon, folks. Aaron Keller here on the Law and Crime Network, along with David Eisbrouch. We are poising for more jury questions here, and very similar testimony out of these last two witnesses, both nurses, both present for the last conversations, in essence, that the victim had.
Yeah, they set the scene of what was going on immediately after the shooting when the vehicle came into the emergency room. They walk through the procedures of what the victim said, what the nurses said, and also, I believe, what the defendant said.
Yeah, and here we have the process of the jurors asking questions. Those questions are subject to objections, just like any other question, and that's the process that we're watching play out.
Correct. In many state courts, the jurors are allowed to ask questions when the witness finishes their testimony, and then the jurors will pass up the question. As you can see, the judge will caucus with the prosecutor and the defense attorney, see if there's any objections, any questions that they feel may be vague or ambiguous. They may edit, change a little bit.
And here we go. Let's listen to the questions.
Okay. Ms. Wyndham.
Yes.
You mentioned that at some point law enforcement showed up in Marie and some local agency, I think you said. Were you the person who reached out to have law enforcement come to the hospital?
No.
Do you have any direct knowledge as to why Mr. McIver would have gone through the triage process and ultimately gone to room 11 or whatever room he went to? Were you part of that process?
I was not a part of the process, but on the sheet, on the computer screen, it gives us a brief overview of what they're coming in for.
Okay, so if you were about to tell them what you read on the screen, it would be because you saw it on the screen, not because you were involved in interacting with Mr. McIver.
Correct.
Okay. Any follow-up, Ms. Griffin?
Nope.
Did you stand there? Nope. All right. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Next witness.
Yes, Your Honor, the state calls Ms. Shahinda Saifullah.
Ms. Yella Marat.
Interesting answer there, David. We had the witness say that she wasn't part of a process but read it on a screen, and we didn't get a hearsay objection there. Is it because it's just a business record and therefore falls within the cracks of the hearsay rules?
The business exception would fall in between the cracks and wouldn't be objectionable to as hearsay, but it doesn't seem that either side was objecting to that question.
Yeah, just a little bit more information about how this all played out. Let's listen to the next witness on the stand now.
You got it? Okay, can you please state your name and spell it for the court and speak loudly, please?
Shahinda Saifullah, ShahindaCyclewala.
You can be seated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Saifullah, and thank you so much for being here today with us. Ms. Elvar is beautiful. Why don't you introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Shahinda Saifullah. I am an RN. I work at the Medical Center now.
Ms. Cyclewala, I'm interrupting you only
Yes, sir.
because I need to make sure folks can hear the important things you have to say. Can you move that microphone down towards you? And then if you can sit or move as close to the microphone as possible, that'll help everyone in the courtroom hear what you have to say. Thank you. So you were mentioning you're now at the DeKalb Medical Center.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Prior to that, where did you work?
At Emory University Hospital main campus emergency room.
Okay, and where is the main campus located?
Clifton Road.
Clifton. And how long did you work at Emory?
I was there for a total of 6 years.
And you were a nurse there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So how long have you been a nurse for?
5 years.
5 years. So were you working there September 25th of 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
What shift were you working?
The 7 p to 7 a night shift.
7 p.m. to 7 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That night when you were working, did you observe any, or did you receive any critical care patients?
Yes.
Okay, can you explain to the jury what patient you saw come in?
Mrs. McIver was one of them.
And lean into the mic a little bit if you can. Sorry, I'm soft-spoken too, so the court reporter can take down what you're saying. So you saw Mrs. McIver. Can you elaborate on that? What did you observe?
I was not involved in the care at the time of the visit, but I only was able to see her coming in on a wheelchair, escorted by a couple of my other fellow nurses, and Mr. McIver was behind them.
Okay, I'm going to show you a video.
Okay.
And if it's easier for you to step down, you can, if you want to come there. Can you tell me what this looks like?
I can't see.
You want to come down here, it might be easier. Leave your jacket there. you recognize this?
That's our desk. Customer service.
Okay, so can you just tell me when to stop?
Yeah.
And you can tell me where you were standing.
I was inside.
Inside, so this is the waiting room?
Yes.
Okay. So we've gone through the doors. Tell me where to stop.
This right here.
In this area? What is this over here?
That's the nurse's desk.
Okay. So you were standing here.
I wasn't standing. I was in the head, right in front of the room, actually. Close to the room.
So close to this room?
No, the critical care room machine.
Okay.
Literally, they were at the door trying to go in, and I was passing over there.
Okay. So can you kind of point out with your finger around where you were standing?
I was walking and coming from here, going this way.
Okay.
To the other side of the mall.
Okay. You can take a seat again. Thank you. And do you remember around what time this was?
No.
No. Do you remember what time in the shift span it probably was?
No.
Okay, that's fine. So were you walking back from another patient, or were you going somewhere?
In the middle of my care, I don't remember exactly
Okay.
where and why I was passing, but I was assigned the nurse. I was one of the working nurses that night.
Okay.
So.
And so you said that you didn't participate in the care of Mrs. McIver.
No, ma'am.
But did you observe anything while they were putting her into the room?
We tend to get nosy. We just saw that she was in a lot of distress and that I think she was bleeding out and they were trying to get her blood. But that's all I knew.
And who was carrying her in?
Oh, she was on the wheelchair. A couple of my staff members, I don't remember exactly which nurses had her.
Okay.
And then I didn't see her. Once she was in the room, I did not see who put her in the bed.
Okay. Did you see her husband this morning?
Yes, he was right behind.
Do you remember what he was wearing?
A golf shirt and jeans, probably.
Okay. Did you speak to him at all?
No.
Okay. Can you describe, do you remember anything else about him?
Oh, he was very flustered and he was very, I shot her.
Okay. So did you hear him say anything?
I heard him say, and this is what I heard, and it was in passing, I was passing through, that I was cleaning my gun in the bathroom and I shot her.
I'm sorry.
I was cleaning my gun in the bathroom and I shot her.
And you heard him say that?
Yes, from him, not from anybody else.
Just to be sure, so the hallway is there. When you were passing him, were you close to him?
Yes.
I'm going to walk towards you. Just tell me when to stop.
Sure.
When I'm close. Was he this close?
Much closer.
This close?
Yeah, I was literally here. We got closer.
Like right here?
Yeah.
So you were passing him when you heard him say that he was cleaning his gun?
Yes.
And you shot her?
Yes.
Did he mention where he shot her?
No, I did not. Because it was in passing, it was so quick. That was the only part of the sentence that I heard.
Okay. And make sure I'm writing this down right. I was cleaning
My gun.
Uh-huh.
I shot her.
Can you say where?
I heard bathroom.
Do you remember where in the sentence he said bathroom? You have to talk in the
I was
mic.
cleaning my gun in the bathroom.
In the bathroom. When I shot her?
Yes.
Okay. Did you share this information with any other nurses?
Not really, no.
Did you speak to the police afterwards?
No.
Did you call the police about it?
No.
Okay. Later on, did you participate in the care of Mrs. McIver at all during the night? Did you observe anyone else later on with her husband?
A family member, probably. I don't know who she
Okay.
was, but a lady in cowboy hat. That's the only significant thing I think about, remember about her.
Do you remember when she arrived?
Sometime later.
Later. Do you remember where you first saw her?
I observed her at the charge nurse's desk.
Okay. Can you show me where that is in this video?
Oh, sure.
The charge nurse desk? Is that up front where the waiting room is, or closer
The
to
main charge nurse's desk.
Where is that?
Not this one.
Okay. So if I go closer, there's a critical care room. This is the hallway that you were walking down.
This one.
Right here. So you were essentially walking from the charge nurse's desk area down the hallway.
But this was sometime later.
This was later.
Yeah.
And then where'd you see the lady in the hat?
At the charge nurse's
At the
desk.
charge nurse's desk. Those are all my questions for that, Your Honor.
Mr. Stanley?
Good afternoon. My name is Don Samuel. We've never met before, have
No,
we?
sir.
Okay. How long were you at Emory?
I was with Emory for 6 years.
Okay.
In all.
Always in the ER?
No. First year I was a nurse tech. I was finishing my nursing school. When I graduated, Emory kept me over, and I was in the ER at Midtown location first for about a year and a half.
Okay.
I transitioned to the ICU for almost 2 years at Midtown.
Okay.
And then I transferred from there in June 2016 to the main campus ER.
Okay. And now you've left Emory altogether?
I've left Emory altogether, yes.
you're-
I'm at DeKalb Medical Center now.
Okay. And when did that happen?
December 18th, 2017 was my first day at work at DeKalb.
And was there a reason why you switched from one to the other?
Better remuneration, better pay.
More money. Okay. So let me ask you what you remember about that night, okay?
Sure.
What time did you come on work that day?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. And I was taking notes. I want to make sure I got it right. You see the wheelchair coming in with Ms. McIver in the wheelchair.
Yes.
Was she talking to anybody?
No,
Okay.
she was almost passed out. She wasn't.
Okay. Who was with her?
My fellow nurses, I don't remember who it was, and Mr. McIver.
Okay. Tell me where they were standing in relation to the
They
wheelchair.
were wheeling her in the room.
Where were people positioned around the wheelchair?
The two nurses were holding the wheelchair at the back.
Okay.
Mr. McIver was right behind them.
Okay. So you got two nurses at the back of the wheelchair moving it forward.
Yes.
And Mr. McIver was following from behind.
Not too far away. He was right behind
I
them.
didn't say too far away,
Okay.
just from
Well,
behind.
You did that.
Right behind.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Nobody's holding her legs or anything like that.
Not at that time. They were almost entering the room at the time.
Okay. When they get into the ER, does Mr. McIver go in and take her off, participate or help in taking her off the wheelchair and putting her into the bed?
I was in passing, so I wasn't even there to witness that. In the room. I did not see her in the room when she got.
Do you remember when you gave your statement to the DAs? You have to say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. Didn't you tell them that when the other nurses were putting her on the bed, he was outside?
No.
You don't remember telling them that?
I don't think so. I didn't see her get on the bed, sir.
Did you tell them when Mrs. McIver was being placed onto the bed, Mr. McIver said to her in the hallway the following? Did you say that? Who among these people was talking to you?
Mr. Adam?
Adam Abadi?
Yes.
Who else?
Johnny?
Stand up.
Jana?
Ms. Griffin?
Miss Griffin, yes.
The two of them?
I didn't remember her last name.
The two of them?
Miss Griffin and Miss Siri.
Okay. So the three of them were questioning you. And did you tell them, I'm going to ask it again, when Mrs. McIver was being placed onto the hospital bed, Mr. McIver said to her in the hallway the following?
No.
You never said that to them?
No. They were wheeling her in the room.
Listen to my question.
Because she's answered it now 3 times.
Yeah.
She has answered your question now 3 times, so ask a different question.
I'm not going to get a fourth.
Nope. Shouldn't have had a third, but there was no objection.
So you didn't see them, and at some point you're just walking down the hall,
Yes, sir.
and you're passing by Mr. McIver, correct? Mm-hmm. And you get about this close, and who's he talking to?
I don't know who he was talking to. I
Wasn't
was
talking to you.
passing. No, he wasn't talking to me.
He was talking to space?
I don't know who he was talking to.
Was
sir.
he talking to the wall?
I don't know.
Your Honor, that's asked and
But,
answered.
okay, well, we're done with that.
Was there anybody else that he was talking to when he was talking about being in a bathroom?
Again, Your Honor, asked and answered.
I didn't ask and answer
It's a different question. Was there any, you asked your question.
Was there anybody he was talking to, or you just walked by and heard him talking in
So
space?
this was a critical patient, and this was a critical patient being put in the room. All staff rushes to try to help.
Okay.
So there was multiple people over there. I have no way of knowing who he was talking to because I was passing. It was so quick.
You were walking the entire time.
Yes.
You never stopped.
Well, for that moment when they were right in my face when I was passing through,
They?
the staff members, the wheelchair, and Mr. McIver.
Was this happening while she was still in a wheelchair?
Yes.
That he made this statement?
Yes, he was speaking it. Yes.
Okay. So the other two nurses would have heard the same thing because they were right in
Probably.
front
I
of
don't
him.
know who was that. I
didn't
don't
say
know
who.
what they heard.
Listen to my question.
Yes, sir.
One of us will talk at a time. I'll let you answer every question I ask.
Objection, Your Honor, she answered the question.
He didn't speak over her answer, but I'll let you ask it again.
You're saying that this didn't happen when she was being put in the bed, but while she was still in the wheelchair?
Yes.
And there were two nurses standing right behind her, pushing the wheelchair,
Right. Nobody was standing. Everybody was in a hurry trying to get her to the bed. Yes.
and he was behind them,
Yes.
and everybody was rushing.
Your Honor, I think we've established.
I would like to be able to answer the question. To say asked and answered is not, if it's not clear,
Okay.
I'm entitled to ask a question to make it
There's a
clear.
difference between not clear and not liking the answer you get. So
I am getting a different answer every time I ask. I would like to be able to get a clear answer, where this occurred, who she was talking to,
Okay.
who would have heard it.
I understand what you want. I disagree that you've gotten a different answer every time you ask. You ask and get the answer the same a few times, and then don't seem to like it, and then you ask the question in a different way. But I'll let you continue. No more objections for a minute. I'll manage this for a little bit. If we are circling around and around and around the wheelchair and who's in line there, then we'll move on to somewhere else.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I would like to start over, and I'm sorry if it's repetitive. This occurs while she is still in the wheelchair, not being put on the bed.
Not yet. No.
There are two nurses behind her
Yes.
pushing the wheelchair.
Yes.
And you don't know who those two nurses are.
I don't remember, sir. Sorry. I don't remember now.
They were both Emory nurses.
Yes, of course.
Behind them is Mr. McIver.
Yes.
They are walking, I can't use that machine, but in one direction towards the room, correct?
Yes.
How close are they to the room?
Almost. The room is here, and they're literally right here. Like they're
Okay.
almost making it into the room.
Okay. And you're walking the opposite direction, right? Correct or not?
I'm
correct?
coming toward them, but yeah. Yes.
I mean, they're walking with the wheelchair, getting to the room, and you're coming from the other way. in the
Towards
hall,
them. Right.
Passing them.
Yes, sir.
You're not going to go into the room.
I'm not. No.
You are not joining
No,
them.
because I have no idea what's going on. Yes.
So it's like being on
Patient
the
is
interstate.
just coming in. Yes.
Like being on the interstate. Two, you're going to pass, right?
Pretty much. Yes.
Okay. And you hear Mr. McIver saying something, correct? You got to say yes or no.
Yes.
And how close is he to the two nurses
Right behind them.
right behind them? Well, I'll do what they do. Can you tell me when I'm close enough to you that I'd be like the two nurses who were close to him when he made this statement?
Yes.
Like this?
Yes.
Okay, so we're like
Your
18
side,
inches apart.
Your side. Yeah.
So when he made this statement, he was 18 inches away from the two nurses who were pushing the wheelchair.
From me. When he's
The
talking.
question is, how far, if you recall, was Mr. McIver from those two nurses pushing the wheelchair? Not how far from
He
you.
was right behind them.
He was right behind them.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's the question I was asking. How close to them is he?
Right behind them.
18 inches?
I can't count. I mean, I can't give you a
As close as I just was.
specific.
Your Honor, we've established it.
We
You
haven't
want to
actually,
stipulate
because
18
she
inches?
was answering a different question, it turns out. So
He was right behind the nurses.
Okay.
18 inches is how much? This much?
So why don't you do with Mr. Samuel what you did with Ms. Eisbrouch and have him stop when he gets as close to you as Mr. McIver was to those other
The nurses, okay.
whatever it was.
Not in relationship to me, in relation to the other nurses.
Yes.
Do you mind if I use your turn? Can I use your
It'd be okay.
That be okay? For you, yes. Okay.
I made it.
They're going to charge me for this. I have no idea how to draw a wheelchair. How's that?
Sure.
I'm a lawyer. Ms. McIver's in the wheelchair, correct? Okay. There's nurse 1 and nurse 2 is behind the wheelchair, correct? You don't know who either one of them are. Mr. McIver is between them?
Right behind them.
You draw where Mr. McIver is. Your Honor, may I have her?
You may.
Put where Mr. McIver is. Okay? Now I'm going to put a 3. He's right between 1 and 2, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And they're going into
the room.
ER2. And you're heading this way. They're about to make a left turn into
Right
ER2.
here.
You're here?
Yeah,
When
they're
do
right
you-
in front of the room. They're about to enter the room.
And where do you hear Mr. McIver say it happened in the bathroom?
I am coming from here. I'm right here.
You're right
Around
there.
Yeah.
So number 4 is you.
So I stopped because patients started coming right at me. I was like, whoa. And I stopped.
Okay. And he just says, as you're passing by, I was cleaning my gun in the bathroom when I shot her.
I heard that sentence. Yes, sir.
You said he was very flustered, is that right?
Yes, sir.
He was very agitated.
Not agitated. He looked very like when something happens that's so untoward, how are you going to look?
You tell me.
Flustered was the only word I could think of.
Describe flustered. I
He
don't
looked
know what it is.
flushed. He looked pale in the face, flushed. And he was just very, I don't know what word I'm looking for. Nervous?
Nervous?
Yep.
Later, someone told you something else about what had happened, correct?
No?
Well,
Your Honor, objection. This is calling for hearsay.
Well, it could get there. We'll see. That's just kind of a vague question. But she said no. Maybe because of what the question asked.
were you later told, and I'm not going to do content, by other staff members the circumstances in which Ms. McIver was shot inside of the vehicle? Were you told that by other staff members?
There was no.
You never heard anything else from any other staff?
Well, we heard stuff, but I didn't try to get into other conversations because I don't like to jeopardize patients' privacy and patients' confidentiality. So I don't like to involve myself in conversations that way outside in the hallway about patients. So no, I did not.
Did you tell anybody, although all the nurses that you were colleagues with, or any doctors, or any techs, or anybody, when you heard what the other circumstances were, that this was not what Mr. McIver said to you earlier?
No, I did not.
You never said that to anybody?
No, I did not.
Did you tell these 3 people that's precisely what you said to other people?
Yes.
You did tell them that? This is my question again.
Okay.
Did you tell the body, the Griffin, who other than Siri? I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll get it right next time.
No, you won't.
We'll put that on there. that what they said happened was not what Mr. McIver said to you. Did you tell them that you had conversations with nurses?
He didn't tell me anything.
Let him finish his question.
Okay.
Because I gotta make sure you're following
Getting
his question.
confused, yeah.
Disputing their version, these other nurses, what they said had happened in the vehicle.
Much later in the night, but like I said, I did not involve myself in the conversations. I heard things, but everybody was busy trying to take care of her at the time.
I need to get an answer.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize.
Did you tell nurses at Emory that what they were saying about the circumstances was inconsistent with what you had been told standing behind the wheelchair?
No.
Okay. That's the first question. And the second question is, did you tell him and her that you did have that conversation?
I didn't have a conversation, but I did tell them that this is what I heard, and then the other staff was saying
Let
that.
her finish.
If you listen to my question.
Objection, Your
Did
Honor.
you tell...
Stop, Mr. Samuels, stop. She was answering in a way that was clearing something up for me at least, but you spoke over her. So let her finish, and then I'll let you ask the question again. I am now understanding a little bit more why you're asking some of the same questions so many times. So if you'd repeat what you were saying, and then Mr. Samuel will go on.
Later on in the night, if your question was that there was talk, but among staff, that there was other information and other stories per se, yes, I heard, but I did not share what I had heard to them. I just had thoughts in my head, but when I did speak with Officer Griffin and Adam and Ms. Siri, I did share that with them, yes.
Here's what I'm asking, whether
Yes.
you shared with them.
I did.
I haven't finished the question.
Okay.
Did you share with them that you told the nurses at Emory that you knew a different version than what they were saying?
I did not tell any nurses what
Did
I
you
had
tell
heard.
them?
No. Why would I say that?
Okay.
Done?
Yes, but I'd like to break.
Can we wrap up
Yes?
this witness and then we'll talk?
Yes?
Okay. Do you have any redirect?
Just one quick question. Ms. Eckel, how long have you been a nurse for?
5 years.
So can you infer when a wheelchair is brought into critical care, and what can you infer they're going to do with the patient on a wheelchair?
Well, we need some serious stuff done to that patient right away.
Are they going to keep her on the wheelchair?
No.
What are they going to do with
No,
her?
they're going to immediately put her on the stretcher.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
You're welcome.
Any questions from the jurors? Okay. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You can step outside. You don't happen to have a 3-minute witness? Not on my best day. Okay. We're going to stop then, ladies and gentlemen. There's some things I need to talk with the lawyers about. And I'm going to let you guys go for the day. We're going to try to start crisply at 9, if you all can be here. And again, if you are able to coordinate in your schedule such that we can go a little bit past 5, you'll notice I don't ever ask them if they can go past 5. They have to. It's up to you all. But I know you're juggling a lot of things. We all are. As you enjoy the basketball tournament tonight or your book or whatever you do, please stay away from information about this case as you've been doing throughout the trial. And we'll see you refreshed tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. And Juror 7, if you don't mind staying, we'll get you out of here as well, but the rest of you can go.
All rise for the jury.
Good afternoon, everybody. Aaron Keller here along with David Eisbrouch, a local attorney in New York City. We're talking about the Tex McIver case, and we just watched some fireworks in the courtroom back and forth between the defense and this witness about exactly who was standing where and what they may or may not have heard during this critical conversation that the witness alleged happened. So, David, let's try to break this down because I'm trying to figure out who looked worse here, the defendant, the defense attorney, or the witness. Can we try to figure that out, or is there any way to know right now?
Well, early on, in my opinion, the defense attorney looked bad. It looked like he was badgering her. It looked like he wasn't giving her a chance to answer. He was asking his question repeatedly. At one point, the judge said, "Move on," is asked and answered. He was trying to establish, very simply, that this witness, another nurse in the emergency room who was not working on this case at the time, but was just walking by the individuals as they entered into the ER or into the examining room at that point, that she allegedly overheard the defendant state that he was cleaning his gun in the bathroom when it went off, which contradicts the story, of course, that it accidentally went off in the car. But the point he was driving at was that the two nurses standing with the victim and the husband at that time, who was much closer to the husband, or a little closer to the husband, did not hear him say that. That's what he was driving at. She was being a little evasive. I think she didn't understand the question. She kept bouncing back and forth a little bit. So in the beginning, where it looked like he was badgering, by the end, I think he was denting her credibility.
You know, it's a question as to whether or not he was asking the questions in proper form as well. And by that I mean there could have been a, not proper form as in the form of the question from a legal perspective, but look, if you're not getting the information out of the witness that you need to rephrase your question. Instead of saying, how far away was he, if the answer is, well, he was close, then the next question needs to be, well, close can be a couple of different things, ma'am. It could be 5 feet, it could be 10 feet, it could be 15 feet, it could be 2 feet. Can you give us the distance in a linear measure, how far away everyone was from everyone else? That would have been the way to ask it without the attorney making himself look abrasive.
Correct, but on the other hand, he did approach the witness, and I believe they did this earlier in the trial, and the judge liked this, or the judge seemed to prefer this, where he walked toward the witness and said, when I'm as close to you as you were to the defendant, stop me. And they did that at first, and she said it was about 18 inches. Then when he continued his questioning, she got it confused and said, no, I was about that distance from the other nurses at the time, or that's how far the nurses were from the defendant. So at that point, it got a little fuzzy what she was remembering and relating to the distant factor. Then they went through it again. And the longer it took, it made her look a little less credible and precise. Maybe credible is not the right word, but precise, that, excuse me, she couldn't even follow his questioning, yet she remembered this statement from the defendant that the two nurses did not.
You know, how's the jury going to respond to this? Is the jury going to look and say the state kept objecting and trying to prevent the truth from coming out? Is the jury going to look and say the defense attorney was just trying to be a bully to the witness and prevent us from learning the witness's truth? Or is the jury going to look and say, well, they were all arguing about something, but the bottom line is she said that he was cleaning the gun in the bathroom when it went off, and that's not what really happened, so therefore the defendant is guilty?
Well, you can never tell what the jurors are going to do until the ultimate verdict is read. However, an argument could be made that the husband was so traumatized at that point that he didn't know what he was saying. People come to emergency rooms all the time in different states of mind, and they just blurt out things that don't make sense. It was obvious at that time how the accident happened, that he was shot from the back seat. Now, perhaps I believe there may be some testimony that he could have been speaking to the driver about possibly changing her testimony. So that's probably where the prosecution's going with this, that he was trying to alter the facts.
You know, and I think one of the key facts that came out there is that the defendant, assuming that he did utter this the way that this witness said, it was uttered at a time when the victim was losing consciousness. So the state could jump in and say he was telling this tale at a point when his wife couldn't contradict it.
That argument the prosecution will most likely be making, it's just a small pieces of the larger puzzle that they're trying to build here. And again, we have many, many more witnesses to come, so we don't know how this is going to shape up
Yeah,
yet.
David Eisbrouch, thanks a lot for joining us here on Law and Crime this afternoon.
Aaron, always a pleasure.
All right, we're going to sign off from the network here on Law and Crime. Of course, a reminder that you can always watch our raw trial feeds on lawandcrime.com. And a reminder, as I always give everyone at this hour, that we are live from at least 9 a.m. until at least 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, with gavel-to-gavel coverage of trials. So we'll sign back on live here at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. For now, this is Aaron Keller, and for everybody here at Law and Crime, have a good one.